I am so conservative.
Rationalize in my head. These are things I read in
And
the
I'm going to talk about Willow Creek.
Okay.
Willow Creek, a few years back, had
remembered
invited...
at the time when Will Rogers said, I don't belong to any organized religion. I'm a Baptist.
Yeah.
I am so conservative.
If you didn't jump to conclusions, you might not get any exercise. I am so conservative. And welcome to the Unknown Webcast. This is just a bit of a trigger warning for those who believe words are more injurious than sticks and stones. I really am so conservative, I can't turn left even when I'm driving.
Is that how you got lost and ended up where you are
That
right
is,
now?
that is. On my way to Michigan, I was going in circles. So in addition to giving trigger warnings to our viewers, Ron Hensel and I both drink coffee for your protection, and we advocate everyone else do the same.
Absolutely.
Today, we will have an opportunity to hear about the Watchtower declaring war on the Apostates from our friend, we think she's our friend anyway.
Well, we hope.
And former JW Elaine Bales. My name is Don Vino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast. And our senior researcher is Senior Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of today's webcast. And here is Ronnie Baby.
Greetings from sunny Florida, where the sun came out, or I'm sorry, the palm tree came out, saw its shadow. The sun doesn't have a shadow, by the way, just in case you're wondering. And now we have 12 more months of summer. Our sponsor for this edition of the Unknown Webcast is World's End Theology Outlet, your one-stop resource for half-baked heresies, dubious doctrines, and other ideas whose time has gone. World's End Theology Outlet, our regular legal disclaimer. Our guest on today's webcast, insert name here, that's Elaine Bales, has no connection whatsoever to any of the satirical content of the Unknown Webcast, hereafter known as the webcast, although we probably will not mention it again. This satirical content includes any and all commercials, end credits, puns, smart remarks, or anything else that might fall under the definition of satire. In the meantime, Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. bears no liability for or responsibility for anyone's opinions regarding this satirical content or regular announcements. Notice the opinions expressed on this webcast are ours and should be yours too if you enjoy it, this webcast, or if it really annoys you and you want to inflict it on someone else to ensure your continued access, please go to midwestoutreach.org, click the yellow donate button, and contribute as you feel led. And never fear, this webcast is Y2K compliant. And don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite video channels. Time for our fake applause. Because we can't afford real fake applause, so we fake it.
We just fake the fake applause.
One day we will have a fundraiser.
And by the way, Elaine, just a reminder, we have to put the disclaimer up in because we're not even sure if you have a sense of humor. So
right. So it's a tragic thing when people are born without one. It's kind of a birth defect for some people.
It is. It's kind of a handicap. It's like being blind if you can't laugh.
And some people transition to having no humor. It's
and sometimes I wonder if I have a sense of humor because after all, I was raised in a cult
and
I didn't even know it.
Yeah. And
it might actually be helpful. You start taking sort of a Jewish view of life. If I didn't laugh, I'd cry. It kind of comes out that way. So we appreciate you joining us again.
Thank you.
Deigning to hang out with the common folk, such as Ron and I.
Yes. Well, I don't know if we're that common, but
it's wonderful to be back. Thank you, guys.
We're definitely not up there with the elites. But well, this shows that you have.
My lighting conditions are a little challenging today because I'm in Michigan and I'm in a different location, and the lighting is. Well, Ron said I need to be in the dark because my deeds are evil.
Yes,
so.
and Michigan is not a very bright place, I guess. So,
now you get into politics. We're trying to politics today. So, Elaine Bales, former JW. We've talked about your story the last time you were on. You've also been to EMNR, and we had you on moved you from a workshop to a plenary position. I need to talk to you, by the way, afterward.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll want to do
sure.
that again. But today we're kind of approaching a different topic, and that is the Watchtower declaring war on apostates. And before we came on, as you noted, this is not the first time that has been done.
Right.
I remember years ago when we joined, my wife and I started getting involved in talking with Jehovah's Witnesses. They would warn them not to take information from folks like us because of spiritual pornography. And they even showed a diagram of how you can place our material into a garbage bin, just in case they didn't know how to do that. And warning about talking to apostates. And we pointed out, well, we're not apostates. We're never was.
Right.
They didn't quite know what to do with that either. Stay away from the internet, because the internet you might accidentally start communicating with apostates. They've had a continual war on apostates. So what is new about their war on apostates?
Well, you have to understand, so the governing body members, these 8 men in New York, they are the ones supposedly they're self-proclaimed Christ's brothers. They apparently were appointed by Christ, who returned invisibly in 1914, but Jesus chose these faithful and discreet slave, who are today's governing body members, to dispense spiritual food at the proper time. Okay, so now these guys are so paranoid because the apostates, those who left the organization, such as myself, I am an apostate to the Jehovah's Witness organization.
Right.
I am a whistleblower, and they're so paranoid of us because we're having an impact on the indoctrinated, who are so blind because of their thought reform. Their minds have been shattered through fear of these false prophets, and they're starting to wake up. They're starting to look at the internet, turn on YouTube, go on Reddit forums. They're starting to read about the crimes of this organization because they're being exposed. So therefore, the governing body members are putting forth quite an effort to demonize the apostates. They attribute it to drinking poison. Why would you go on a forum to try to even preach to these people? That would be just like holding a person's hand who's drinking poison and then drinking it yourself.
Right, right.
So they've declared war on the apostates because they can't silence us. They have no control over us anymore. We have freedom of speech, and we know their secrets. We were in the organization, and we overcame. We conquered them.
Now Ron has queued up your video.
Yeah.
He has something which I have no idea what it is, so we will both be surprised.
Well, actually, I don't think Elaine will. She pointed me to this video.
Okay.
So this is from your webcast or your program, and you are, well, I tell you what, I'm gonna go into present mode here with sharing system audio, and you can tell me. Hold on a second. This gentleman, what's his name?
Yeah, so this is David Splain. He is a governing body member. This was from last summer. Now, the setting is, this is at their annual convention. So Jehovah's Witnesses all over the world are listening to this brother of Christ give his spiritual food, right? Should it be enlightening and edifying? Now, I may have increased the speed. I can't remember in an attempt to shorten the videos. Plus, there's so many triggers that people get when hearing these men speak. So,
yeah, his voice sounded different. So
yeah, I probably increased it.
If anybody knows what his voice normally sounds like, it's been altered. And it is him, though, talking, and you can confirm this on other websites that are showing the same video. So I'm starting at 23 minutes and 19 seconds. I hope I have the volume adjusted properly, and I'm just going to go, and then I'll pause for your comments and maybe our questions after not too long.
We may read that a person or an organization was sued and then settled out of court. Does settling out of court mean that they were guilty? Not necessarily.
So, I mean, I have to concede that point, you know. So he's making legal points that I think everyone would agree with. And here's a problem, though. When you settle out of court, a lot of times you have to sign agreements that you're not going to talk about it.
Non-disclosure, right.
Non-disclosures. And so the truth doesn't get out. So that's a problem in my mind. If you settle out of court and sign one of those and you can't talk about it, well, that's not exactly conducive to truth telling. So let's keep going.
Now, in this country and others, court cases are often handled by a jury. Now, who are on the jury? Ordinary citizens with no legal training.
Okay, yeah, but the judge gives them direction, and the judge is still in control of the courtroom.
But not only that, these ordinary citizens don't always have access to all the facts, because the judge and lawyers decide which facts will be shared with the jury.
But that's according to the due process of law, you know, so, okay, is he attacking the court system now? It kind of sounds that way.
So it's unlikely that the whole truth will ever come out in court.
Okay, that doesn't logically follow. Just because the judge and the lawyers control what the jury hears, it does not logically follow that the results won't be good. He seems to be saying that here.
Actually, neither side probably wants the whole truth to come out in court.
So is he saying his side doesn't want the whole truth to come out in court? Okay, that's if neither side, and he's on one side, okay.
Court. Now, sometimes attorneys deliberately withhold information that would be prejudicial to their clients. And in addition, the juries have prejudices like everyone else, and some of them just can't set their prejudices aside.
Okay, so this really doesn't deal, this is like he's attacking the process. He's basically saying he's trying to impugn or cast doubt on the legal process. So to me, when you start doing that, you're probably on thin ice with your, I mean, that's what I would think. You can we have an appeal system. Okay, you can keep pushing this up to a higher level. If you're not happy with the outcome at one level, you can go higher. So if you're going to just stop and settle out of court and then complain that it's a flawed system. Well, of course it's a flawed system. It's made of human beings, but we have all these other things in place to try to make up for that.
That was a case of medical malpractice by a doctor. There was a jury, and at trial, the doctor was clearly shown to be in the wrong, but the jury didn't give the patient a penny.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe we should know more about that case to find out, you know.
The lawyer was confused, so after the trial, he approached two of the jurors and asked, "If you don't mind, tell me which part of the testimony you didn't believe." The jurors replied, "Oh, we didn't get that far. The doctor was cute, and we didn't want him to have to pay anything."
Okay, I'd really like to see, I'd really like to see that one. And I would like to say that's one case, okay?
Well, it is one case, but just, and I'm not sure what this case is about, where we're going with this, but as you know, in the McMartin case, for example, the jury found them guilty, even though all the evidence did not support that.
Right.
And afterwards, interviewing the jury, they said, well, we knew they didn't do those things, but we knew they did something.
Okay. So we had to make certain concessions. Depending on the jurisdiction where your case is being tried, depending on a whole slew of factors, especially in a cultural atmosphere that is anti-religion in general, you do run these risks, the kind that he's talking about. And so we've seen Christians and others end up perhaps not getting full legal, protection that they need. But I have a question for you, Elaine. How many cases are we talking about when we're talking about? Okay. He's referring.
Now, what cases are we talking about here? We're talking about Ron. We're talking about a trial, but I have no idea what trial it is.
Well, I had to skip over a lot. He's not
Yeah.
speaking of a specific trial as I
No.
understand it. He's talking about there's been a whole slew of cases, and what
Right.
he's admonishing what Jehovah's Witnesses to do is to not just accept each case as reported in the news at face value. So he's assuming that they will be hearing more cases in the future.
Right.
He's assuming that more is
Exactly.
going to come out, and he's preparing the audience
Right.
and he's trying to. We might say he's trying to instill some critical thinking skills in them to prepare them, and maybe that would be the most charitable way we could put this. But if you notice, every time he does this, he's trying to impugn the legal process.
Right.
He's trying to cast doubt on it.
Yes. So
what
he knows all of the legal cases that are out there. Even, I mean, we have no clue how many they've settled out of court, but we know that this goes back decades, and it's because of their crimes of harboring pedophiles.
Harboring pedophiles. See, now we're getting to it. He's talking about cases primarily about child molestation amongst the ranks of Jehovah's Witnesses.
So
right, and so he's causing doubt in the minds of his followers, because he's getting to the point that these are all lies from apostates. But he can't get away with that. So now he's causing doubts in their minds. So basically, the government is out to get us, because the government lies in the hands of the wicked one. So don't believe anything, because even if you see an elder or a high-ranking Jehovah's Witness convicted of something, the jury probably felt that the other person was cute. So,
something made him sympathetic. Something made somebody sympathetic to the jury, and that had more sway. And we have to acknowledge that lawyers do this all the time. They are deliberately out there, whether they're for the defense or the prosecution, trying to make the person that they're doing, like if they're defending the person, they want to make that person look as sympathetic as possible. So we've all heard of cases where there might have been a minor fender bender, but the guy shows up with a neck brace and all these things, and why is maybe whatever, and trying to make him look more sympathetic. And then on the other side, you have the prosecution or whoever, maybe it's the defense, trying to make, in this case, the victim look more like a scurrilous character, dredging up things from their past. So he's trying to prepare. He's setting the stage for future cases that they might hear about, which kind of indicates to me that there are future cases that he's concerned that they might hear about.
The governing body members were named as defendants in at least one of the cases.
Governing body, people like him.
Yes,
people in his circle.
He's one of 8. Yes, we just a few days ago, the Pennsylvania Attorney General have a press conference that 4 Jehovah's Witnesses, I don't know if they were all elders or some were elders, but 4 male Jehovah's Witnesses were just arrested on 19 cases of child sex abuse. One of the 4 barricaded himself in a room and killed himself.
Now,
so
to be clear,
this is all coming out. Yeah.
To be clear, none of the governing body are directly being accused themselves of child molestation.
No. What it is so their policies perpetuate this child trafficking. So basically, a child trafficker is anybody who even stops or does not even report known child sex abuse. So these elders who are hearing these cases that of child sex abuse are told to not report it. They're told that they must uphold what they call the 2-witness rule, that there must be 2 witnesses to the crime before it can be considered. So these are policies of the governing body, and this is why they were named as defendants.
So
but more and more worldwide.
I'm going to make a note of that 2-witness rule because I want to come back to it. So we're not saying that this gentleman himself is under suspicion of
No.
child molestation or human trafficking or anything like that. Nor are we saying that any of the governing body are. But there have been
It's their policies.
there have been charges that because of their policies have given cover.
Perpetuated.
They're perpetuated. Yeah. So and
So
he
now I have a question to interrupt you two for a second.
please.
How does this bear on the Watchtower declaring war on apostate?
He's about to make that declaration. These
Okay.
are comments leading up to that. This is
Good.
He's
this is, in
preparing
fact,
his audience.
in your 27-minute video here, this is the final clip, as far as I could see, where he comes to that. So let's keep going here.
Perfect.
So brothers, let's not be naive. Don't believe everything you read. Just because an article is called a news report doesn't make it true. And TV producers, they have their own agenda, prejudice, and viewpoint.
Now you've edited this, so I'm seeing fast clips, as they say. Okay.
Yeah.
Satan is behind the twisted teachings of apostates. He's the father of the lie. And those who lie are doing exactly what their father does. The apostates have nothing to offer us, brothers. All they have to offer is hate. All they have is, to offer is criticism and negative talk. But oh, how upbuilt we feel when we're with those who love Jehovah. Be like the Bereans, referred to in Acts chapter 17. Now, these were more noble-minded than those in Thessalonica, for they accepted the word with the greatest eagerness of mind, carefully examining the scriptures daily. Carefully examining the scriptures daily.
So I wonder what this has to do with these cases, but okay, I agree, we should carefully examine the scriptures.
Well, what's so amazing is he just spent the whole talk telling them not to not to go on forums, not to do this, not to double check. And now he says, be like a Berean. You see that double speak?
So yeah, because why would you be checking the scriptures unless you're making sure that the thing you heard was in conformity with
true
scripture?
or not, right.
What are you listening to? I don't know.
And this is being applied to the Apostle Paul. And the Bereans go, okay, we heard what you said now. You kind of stayed over in the corner. We're going to check on this, and we'll get back to you in a little bit.
Okay.
To see whether these things were so. When you hear something, check it out. Don't just circulate it. Don't just believe it. Check it out. False rumors are often spread during wartime. Brothers, this is war. We need to put up a hard fight for the faith, as if our life depended on it. Because it does.
Anyway, friends, that's it for this. I wish I could have spent more time on this recap, but I'm kind of overloaded right now with producing videos for this convention.
Okay, so I'll leave it at that. Didn't mean to stop you with your mouth open there, but when I taught middle school, I would occasionally show videos and I would hit the pause button and they were always laughing at the way the person looked on the screen. It's like middle schoolers do that kind of thing. So nice room though. I like the way you got it decorated. So in any case, okay, as Christians, let's just try to be nice here to David Splain. He's the head of the governing body.
No, he's just one member. He just happened to be the one giving this talk. There's been other talks on this topic about, the apostates are going to go up and smoke, and he blows out a match, and everybody laughs. How they're going to destroy the apostates. Yeah.
So he is, of course, Christians would agree we're in a spiritual battle. We wrestle not with flesh and blood. Right. To me, it sounds like he's saying that they're wrestling with flesh and blood. He's declaring war on people. Is that unfair? An unfair way to hear what he's saying? It's fair way?
It's really hard when you hear a spiritual leader. Let's just call him a spiritual leader. Would you ever hear a pastor from a pulpit say, we can't wait until these apostates are dead, that they're going to go out and smoke? We can't wait, and everybody laughs. Would you ever hear that?
So
how bizarre is that?
That wasn't in this clip. Was it also David Splain or somebody else saying that?
That was Tony Morris. Yeah, okay. He gave a talk about that. Yeah, because we're a threat. We know the truth. We know the truth about them. They're operating on the dark side of religion, and they are, they're not being truthful. They're committing crimes. Their crimes now are coming out into public knowledge. and they're desperately trying to keep their indoctrinated.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that when I speak in churches on the role of the pastor, pastors in the congregation, those sorts of things, what the church ought to be doing, one of the points I make is that pastors and those who rise in leadership in the church, Ron and I would fit in that category, not maybe as high as, say, Franklin Graham, but still, we have risen to a leadership level which puts us in this peculiar position of living in a glass house. In other words, we are accountable. And everyone around us has Windex. They can see what we're doing. That applies to the Watchtower as well. If you're going to be a leader, you have to be accountable. So simply to assault those who are pointing out bad behavior in the ranks as being covered up by headquarters is, on the face of it, a disregard for the word of God on the issue of being accountable as leaders.
Yes.
Well, they don't edify their followers at all. There's never anything edifying. I recap on my YouTube channel. I recap their monthly JW broadcasting, where one governing body member, usually a governing body member, will speak for an hour or however, and I do their updates once every other month or so. They say that they're edifying and comforting, but they focus only on death. They focus on disasters. I just uploaded one, I don't know, maybe it was yesterday. I just can't seem to remember anymore. I do so many. It was this weekend or yesterday. And it was all about disasters and death and anything that they can use to tear these people down,
Right.
and to keep them in this state of anxiety. They told them to pack go bags, these emergency kits, and they put out an Awake magazine, I think in 2021, with like a perforated page. It would just showed the dots where you can cut it. I don't think it was perforated, and giving them information on what to put in these go bags. And these go bags are supposed to be placed by their car, so that when they get this phone call, nobody knows from whom or when or why, that they need to go and flee. And this whole governing body update, 22 minutes long on their website, update number 7, was all about, I forget the theme. When danger comes, act quickly. The Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they are in imminent danger, that everybody's turning against them.
I did a series on the Jehovah's Witnesses when I did a Wednesday night series on cults at my church, and the longest series were Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventism. So I tried to get in depth into the history. Now, I admit, I'm doing this for a lay audience that is being introduced to this stuff for the very first time. So I didn't dig as deep as I could have. I'm not aware of any time in their history when they've done the kind of thing you just described, when they kind of appeal to kind of a survivalist mentality.
Right.
Armageddon was always coming,
right,
but
right
they were
supposed
to prevail.
We're seeing them doing something now that other groups have done in the past.
Right.
For example, David Koresh and his group.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking about things that ended badly.
Right. Solar Temple is another one like that, right? Groups
where when they went down this path, things ended tragically, horribly. I don't recall them ever setting themselves on this path in their history.
Right.
Now, of course, there's a lot that happened in the 20s and 30s. There were times when the leaders were put in prison.
Right.
But I don't recall reading that they were telling their followers to get ready for some kind of mass, assault from the government. Even though it looked like it was happening, they could have looked justified. But I don't remember them saying that, doing this kind of thing back then.
Well, here's what's very frightening: is in their November 2013 Watchtower, I think it was page 20 or 21, they said, For life-saving direction, you must obey the elders, even if it doesn't seem practical from a human standpoint.
Wow.
And this is weird because they don't even have a date. Like they used to have dates frequently,
Yeah, no more.
you know?
Mm-mm.
And so there was like, you would think that back when they first said like 1914, 1925, 1940, I don't recall them as we're getting close to that. I don't recall any kind of warnings like that or advisories coming from Brooklyn back then. I don't recall. Looks like we lost you, Elaine. Lost your picture.
Lost you, Elaine. Lost your picture.
Do we have your voice?
Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we can
No,
see
we
you.
can
Okay.
see you.
Sorry about that.
I don't recall them issuing these kind of advisories back when they actually had an actual date.
Right.
And now they don't have a date, but they're doing this thing. What did you just say they're telling people to do? Be prepared.
Obey for life-saving direction. Obey, even if it does not seem practical from a human standpoint. That was in the November 2013 Watchtower, page 20. They've repeatedly say this. They refer back to that Watchtower. It's very alarming, very, very alarming. And they had a campaign in November 2020, worldwide campaign, in which every Jehovah's Witness, millions around the world, wrote millions of handwritten letters where they were told to write these letters, but don't say that you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You need to sign your name. You need to put your return address, not the headquarters or
Kingdom Hall,
anything.
right?
And they were told to they sent this specific Watchtower called "What is God's Kingdom?" along with these handwritten notes. And this Watchtower focuses on how governments are to blame for evil in the world, and how their God, Jehovah, was going to one day destroy all governments. Now, who did these letters go to? Public officials in all levels of government all around the world.
So this sounds kind of threatening to me. If I were to get one of these letters, I would think, okay, why? I mean, I don't know that all of these leaders are totally ignorant that there are religious people out there who entertain these views, but why would you go to the trouble of almost threatening me? Now we've lost your bill.
I'm so sorry. For some reason, I'm getting phone calls.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, people want to know, is this really you? People are watching hopefully they're watching the webcast right now, and they're trying to say, hey, when did you record that? Well, I'm not recording. I didn't record it. I'm still in the middle of it.
We're still live. We're breathing even.
Yeah.
And we're getting ready, because one of the things about apostates is, yes, they've declared war on apostates, but they also do that in the Kingdom Hall, and they work really hard at making sure that they are God's clean people, clean, organized people.
It's got to be a lot of work.
And the only way to do that is to get the apostates out of there, and that can be really difficult sometimes. So
yeah, that's why you might need some special help. And our friends at World's End Theology Outlet, your one-stop resource for half-baked heresies, dubious doctrines, and other ideas, whose time is gone, they have some questions. Do you struggle to find time to deal with all the evil slaves in your midst? Do you need help in making examples out of those who question Jehovah's organization? Are there more apostates in your Kingdom Hall than you know what to do with? Well, millions now living will never fly out of your Kingdom Hall faster than with the left foot of disfellowship.
Yeah,
It comes with patented technology that automates the process. You line them up, it kicks them out. It is the winner of the 2015 Soul of the Organization Award, the left foot of disfellowship, only at World's End Theology Outlet. Yes, you can relate to that, can't you, Elaine?
Absolutely. I loved it. That was great.
Yes, I teamed up with a Jehovah's Witness back in the early 80s, right about 80, 81. And we were trying to witness to Jehovah's Witnesses in the Chicago area. And he was, of course, considered an apostate. And we had these two JWs. I think one was, they had these titles. I don't remember. One of them began with a P. I'm not having a good day here. I don't
Is it a
remember.
Jehovah's Witness?
Yeah.
Presiding overseer?
No, he was much too young for that.
Pioneer?
Pioneer. Yeah, one was a pioneer, and the other was, I don't know, just a regular JW. And we were meeting in my friend's house for several meetings, and he was getting frustrated. Now I'm the kind of guy I can keep going and going and going, you know.
Yes, we know that. We do know that.
I mean, that'd be an ideal Jehovah's Witness, because they'll just do the Bible study with you until Armageddon comes, you know, and I would do that. So, excuse me, he got frustrated though. My friend was getting frustrated, and finally, there was one night I wasn't able to make it. I was working late or something. I couldn't get there, so he just met with him, and he told him, he spilled the beans. I used to attend this Kingdom Hall. I had these questions. So this is like only 5 years after the last failed Armageddon, or 6 maybe after the last failed Armageddon prophecies. So he was in the Watchtower in the 70s up and left, I think, in 76. And they were furious. Now, I didn't know all that much about Jehovah's Witnesses, but I kind of knew it was going to be a bad thing when he shared this. I kind of knew this is going to be the end of our relationship with these people.
Yeah.
And I got on the phone and tried to, you know, patch things up. And he says, you played, what this one I was talking to says, you played us for fools. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, I wouldn't have put it that way. But, I mean, I didn't get that. But I did learn at that point that it's actually offensive to them to be in the presence of an apostate. They find the idea of being an apostate just inherently offensive. And so this was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And it hasn't changed. They haven't lightened up on this. So now it doesn't seem like, for most JWs, it's going to be a big leap to say, not only are these people just inherently evil and offensive, and I don't even want to be in their presence, and I certainly don't want to listen to them, to go from that point to saying we are at war with these people. We assume the very worst motives on their part. And
so, let's go to Elaine, who is the guest for today, and let her start waxing eloquent on all of these issues that we've just raised.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we are as dead. They consider us dead. You know, one of the things that I have on my mind coming up is, I know, you know, my parents live maybe about 15 miles from me, and I've been an outcast for more than 30 years. And I heard from another family member that my father's not well. So, you know, my father's 90, he turned 90 a couple of days ago. And well, what happens? Am I even going to be told if my father passes away? And if I'm even told, will I go to the, you know, they don't even have funerals. They have crazy talks and all of that. But, you know, these are the things that we have to deal with, these disfellowshipped people, these apostates that we're whistleblowers, basically. And, you know, one of the things that the Jehovah's Witness organization has created is, it's called these hospital liaison committees, HLC. And Jehovah's Witnesses are told that these elders come to their bedside when they're not well to comfort them, but really we kind of call them the death squad, because they want to make sure that they don't take blood, which is, you know, against their doctrine, but also to make sure that any unbelieving family members, any apostates, if they show up, that they don't speak to them. So they will coerce. I call it coercing. People may not believe that. Maybe there's a better word for it. But, you know, the Jehovah's Witness who's not doing well, lying in a hospital bed, you have these loving elders come. They sign over their rights to the elders. Now the elder has all rights.
Really?
If an apostate comes in, the son or the daughter, such as myself, they won't let the apostate see their loved one.
Right.
So yeah, we have no rights. We're considered dead. They call us mentally diseased, filthy maggots. It's very
So there's
sad.
no milk of human kindness for you. I mean, it was considered pretty cruel during the COVID lockdowns that people weren't allowed to see their elderly parents who were going through their last days. Gee, I wonder if any Jehovah's Witnesses were kept from seeing their elderly parents
Well, we know that there
because of
were
COVID.
because, yeah, they interviewed some of them and they applauded some of the Bethelites for not going to their dying mother's bedside,
Mm.
who wasn't even an apostate.
Why would you applaud that?
The whole lockdown that the Jehovah's Witnesses perpetuated on their followers was way above and beyond the norm, to the extreme. These poor people for 2 years didn't see their friends and family. They were, terrified in their homes, especially the elderly ones.
So,
And yet they had to keep up promoting the Watchtower, and they did that through
letters.
Letter writing and phone calls.
Mhm.
So, why do you think that they took that extreme approach?
Well, of course, to instill fear. They can. Deuteronomy 28 tells us the MO of a false prophet. So if someone speaks in God's name and it does not come true even once, they're a false prophet. But what is the counsel? The counsel is, do not fear them. So false prophets rule by fear. This organization is ruling these, they call them, indoctrinated, they call them good for nothing slaves. They're ruling by fear. The Jehovah's Witnesses are terrified. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the rank and file Jehovah's Witnesses. They're very kind. On the outside, they're very kind. They're very morally clean, right? They seem very, very nice. Most people just know them as the kind people who walk the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Proselytizing. But little do they know they're trying to save the world from being exterminated by their God, their false God, who stole the name of the God of the Old Testament.
So they, I mean, in my head, I was thinking, was this extremely harsh approach to lockdowns, and they remained without having any regular services for 2 years.
Yeah, at least long time.
They didn't get together.
It's just been recently, like in the last 6 or 8 weeks, I think, that they let them start going door to door again.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. And so I assume that was about the time they actually started meeting again.
Yes.
Right.
So they didn't see each other.
Correct. Correct.
They weren't. So like for us, I mean, our general religious culture already has a pretty low view of corporate worship, and that has infected the evangelical church, I think, as well. So that we don't treat it with the gravity that I think Scripture would have us treat it. But even then, people, even given that premise, that still most evangelicals, after a while, they're saying, okay, enough is enough. We've got to get back to worshiping. Even if we have to wear masks or something, we have to do it in person. We have to see each other. It's not the same in a Zoom meeting, we do it. I mean, we're looking
I've been asked to put a bag over my head. Does that
beg your face. So, we have all of these commands in Scripture: admonish each other, encourage each other. You can't really do them without meeting together. You can't.
Right.
But somehow they were able to. So this, to me, just kind of emphasizes the fact that their purpose in meeting isn't the biblical purpose. It's
right.
not the purpose of worship, mutual building up, helping each other. I mean, it is really. I mean, I've been to the Kingdom Halls, so I think I can speak from experience. It's just an indoctrination session. That's really all it is.
And the purpose of meeting is to keep the Jehovah's Witness so busy that they can't They don't have the time to verify, to be a Berean.
To question.
I mean, the average week of a Jehovah's Witness in a nutshell is Monday you go to work, Monday night you study for Tuesday's meeting, Tuesday you go to work, Tuesday night you go to the meeting, Wednesday you go to work, Wednesday night you study for Thursday, Thursday work, Thursday night meeting. Friday you're studying for service for Saturday, Saturday out in service, Saturday afternoon you're studying for Sunday. Sunday you go out in service after the meeting.
So on Tuesdays and Thursdays they have meetings, and on Saturdays and Sunday, and on Saturday they have service. They go out
Sunday they have the meeting. Now they since
and you have to fill out time cards. You still have to fill out time cards.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
Just
done online
so that God knows that you put in your time for that month.
But you know, Don, we know that in Spain the government was compensating the organization, the Jehovah's Witness organization, based on the number of proselytizing hours by the indoctrinated.
And compensating.
Now,
what do you mean?
We don't, well, because this government in Spain was giving them money, financially supporting the organization. Now, we don't know if that is the same case in the USA or not, but we know, isn't that, to me, all the hours that I spent knocking on doors when I was a pioneer and all that, to think that the reason I was counting my time was so that the organization could be compensated by the government. I don't know if that was the case in the USA, but we know that that was the case, and I believe it was in Spain. That to me is unbelievable, because I did not like knocking on doors at all.
They don't do any field service on Sunday, do they?
They do. Yeah, they do all the time.
I thought I heard the last time I was in a Kingdom Hall meeting, they mentioned people going on field service. That it sounded like that afternoon. I thought, really, on Sunday? I don't usually get knocks on my door on Sunday from them, but I usually get
they might only do return visits, which is anybody who shows an interest, or they might do a Bible study or something in the field.
Right, or they might have their kiosk, because there's quite a few of them that have a kiosk, and they'll go set up at a truck stop or other location.
So how many hours a week doing kingdom work would you say the average JW does? Not the pioneers or anything, but
well, to be considered in good standing, it was 10 hours a month, which I rarely ever did, unless but that's a lot, because what they say is that, so like on a Saturday morning, you leave the house at like 8:40 to get to the Kingdom Hall at 9. You go over like 10 to 15 minutes of logistics and maybe a verse or two. And then you leave, you get into your territory maybe at 9:40, but you can't start your time until you knock on your first door. So if it's a rural territory or somewhere, you may not get into the territory until 10. Now, you left your house at 8:40. So your time may start at 10 or 10:15. By 11:15, you've only gotten 1 hour and you've blown the whole morning.
Yeah. So, I mean, 10 hours a month is technically 20 minutes a day, but it's really not just 10 hours a month. It is all that time.
Right, much more.
Prepping, things like that.
Because the majority of them go out on a Saturday morning. So a majority of them are leaving their house at 8:40. They may be finishing at 11 or 12, and they've only put in 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half.
And to be fair, I mean, I saw, at least in my experience, a social aspect to this. I used to go to Dunkin' Donuts on Saturdays every once in a while. And if I was there around 11 or 12, all of a sudden, all these people men wearing shirts and ties and women wearing dresses came into the Dunkins and sat down and started chatting. And it didn't take me long to figure out that JWs were getting off of their door-to-door work at that time. It was a regular thing. So they were socializing. So
they were rewarding themselves for the horrors of knocking on doors.
And I have talked to JWs who really did not like doing door-to-door work. They really didn't like it.
I mean, think about it.
How does the treatment by the Watchtower of those they consider apostates, how does that affect apostates, number one? And how does that affect the families that are inside that would like to have a relationship with their child, their daughter, their son, their spouse, or whatever? Your mic is off. Your mic is off.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
I'm just gonna reboot, I guess.
Try again.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah,
I'm
we
sorry
can
Now we
about
got
that. So how does it affect us? It destroys. It destroys lives. People are committing suicide.
Mm.
You have family members who they love their disfellowshipped family members, but they're told it's a loving arrangement, and they're afraid because they feel that, oh, if I just answer that text, then maybe they would have come back. Maybe this loving arrangement would have come back, when it's really a public shaming, a public
Right.
humiliation tactic. The Jehovah's Witnesses feel, well,
She's getting a lot of calls.
She is getting a lot of calls. While she's doing that, I want to go to something in 1 Corinthians about.
She's back.
Okay,
You're
this
just a very
whole
popular
issue
person.
of what you're doing with someone who's actually involved in actual sin, not in
Right.
rebellion to leadership. In 1 Corinthians 5, we have the man that Paul says, "Get him out of the church."
right.
Why is that? Well, we have two things going on in the passage. Thing one, we have a guy who is involved in a sexual sin that Paul says is so bad, even the pagans aren't doing this. And the second is the church was proud of the grace they are exhibiting to this person who is unrepentant in that sin.
Yeah.
So he's not saying to kick him out because they're questioning the leadership or because they're necessarily behaving, badly, but because they are unrepentant and uncorrectable in
Yeah.
serious sexual immoral sin. That's not what we're talking about here.
Right. And Don, nowhere in those verses does it say to shun him for 30 plus years, which is what has happened to me. I do not know the third and fourth generations of my immediate family, simply because I walked away from my religion.
Right.
So it doesn't say they have, if they want to come back, they have to sit in the back of the Kingdom Hall for 9 months to 12 months. They're not allowed to come in until after the prayer. Nobody's allowed to look at them or turn their way, cross the street, and they have to prove their repentance to these elders.
That was a kind of penitentialism that was practiced in the early Middle Ages. It has been modified substantially. It was modified substantially over the course of the next several hundred years. But what you just described is textbook. They would have to stay. They could, if they wanted to come back, they spent so many months outside the church.
Right.
Then they could come into the foyer or the narthex, and then they could come in and sit in the back, but they couldn't take communion. It was it was very unbiblical, and
Right.
it was also counterproductive. You're going to lose more people than you keep, and it has nothing to do with grace. You have to earn your way. It's back into God's favor.
I can tell you, because the PIMO exists, which is physically in, mentally out, shows you that this public shaming is a tool to keep people in.
I like
to
that.
keep those
physically and mentally out, because that describes the way I was for the time leading up to my departure from the group that I was in.
Well, and we are aware that at any given time, about a third of the Kingdom Hall wants to leave, but they don't know where to go.
Right.
I was in the same spot.
We have had occasion where we've led an entire family to the faith, and it was glorious, only to discover that the wife stayed in, but was seriously committing suicide. Why?
Thinking about
because she felt it was her job to make sure the rest of the family stayed faithful. She didn't think she could stay faithful, and so if she was out of the picture, they would at least have the opportunity to make it in the kingdom. And then in her discussions with her, the husband looked at her and said, I was considering suicide. Why? The same reason. But they didn't talk to each other. Why? because the Watchtower discourages those kinds of conversations.
Absolutely.
Now, Don, do you know that happened in Michigan, where a woman was being shunned, and I forget her name, but you can do an internet search of this. And she waited at home. She killed the daughter. She killed the son. She killed the husband. She killed the dog.
Right.
And she felt that if they all die before Armageddon, they'll have a better chance of being resurrected for a second chance.
And she left a letter explaining that, or what? Or did she?
You can read the article. I know that an apostate knew of this, knew the family. That woman who was disfellowed went to the Kingdom Hall and irately, there's a video of this also, was saying, "You did this. Your public shaming of her. You did this.
I think
this
I saw
is why
that.
she died."
I think I saw that. Tell me, one of the things that keeps coming up, not only in Jehovah's Witnesses, but in other cults, including the one I used to be in, is the redefinition of the word love.
Yes.
What does it mean to be loving? In my particular group, it did not mean that the leader had to be patient or kind or any of the things that Paul listed in 1 Corinthians 13 when he said, love is this, love is that. And I'm hearing, when I hear that Jehovah's Witnesses prevent so-called apostates from seeing their dying relatives on their deathbeds, that's not kind. But would they claim it's loving?
Yeah, obedience is love. I would say, if I could think of one word to describe Jehovah's Witness love, it's being obedient.
So if we think of the Watchtower in terms of Orwell's 1984, it is simply a redefinition of language. They use the same words, but it is an entirely different definition that we normally associate with it.
Yeah. Yes.
So do they actually say that? Is that just a good paraphrase of things that they have said? Obedience is love? Or is that...
I would say no. I don't think that they have said that, but you're not allowed to question, and you have to obey. And obey means you're turning somebody in. You turn your loved one in, and that's loving.
Right. And you can see, like, okay, we would acknowledge that not everything that seems loving to the world is, I mean, if we don't warn them about the wrath to come, we don't tell them they need Jesus to go to heaven, that's not loving. And I think it was it John Pinette, is that his name, the magician guy who, or no, Penn Jillette. John Pinette is a comedian. He passed away. Penn Jillette. He actually said that. He's an atheist. And he put out a video years ago saying, if you really believe this stuff, if you're a Christian, you really believe you're going to save me from going to hell by giving me the gospel, well, I'm not going to respect you unless you try to proselytize me.
Right.
Even though, he would find it annoying, but he respects it. So,
but it should be because you care about the other person, not because you're under some commandment that God is going to hurt you if you don't do it.
Right. And it never leads to, I mean, proselytizing or even protecting the flock from wolves would never lead me. If I knew that there was a wolf in sheep's clothing whose mother was dying.
Right.
And his mother was a Christian, but he was a false teacher. I'm sorry, I just don't see how it fulfills any biblical command to prevent that false teacher from seeing his mother on her deathbed. Unless he's been mean to her, unless she doesn't want to see him because he's cruel. But if none of those things are present, if none of those things are part of the equation, I would say I'm the one being cruel. If I stand in his way to at least have some closure with his mother on her deathbed, and maybe there's a chance that she might lead him to the Lord You know.
You know, at this point, I want to move this to you in a moment. I want to ask you a question, because I think we can, as we're dealing with these issues that are coming from the leadership, we can come across as though we somehow are disdainful of Jehovah's Witnesses in general, or that we consider them evil, or
No.
and from my vantage point, and I know Ron would agree with this, and I'm pretty sure you would agree with this as well, most Jehovah's Witnesses you're going to meet are really wonderful people.
I've
Right.
had really good, times talking with them, and I find that they're very, very pleasant, very friendly, very nice people. Yeah.
So Elaine Bales, as a former Jehovah's Witness who used to look at Ron and I and people like us as evil,
And with good
opposers,
reason too.
I
and with
felt
good
sorry
reason,
for you.
because we are evil, yeah. Evil opposers. Now you're on the other side of the fence. Talk to those who are watching in to say, why should they care about you or people like you who are still Jehovah's Witnesses? Why should they care?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Talk
Why-
to Jehovah's
why
Witnesses.
Yeah, why should they care enough to pray about them, to care about them, to try to figure out a way to reach them, to think
Yeah.
kindly of them? Why should
Yes.
they care?
Because they are enslaved to the enemy. They're happy to be called good for nothing slaves. They have no hope. They're not under the new covenant.
They actually use
perform-
that "good for nothing" term. That's
Yeah.
their
They're-
language.
They're called good for nothing slaves. That's how they're referred to. Good for nothing. Not only a slave, but a good for nothing slave. They're not under the new covenant. They have no hope of salvation. They do not recognize Jesus Christ as their Savior. They're living in darkness. They're enslaved. They have no thought, no freedom of thought. And they've been in this organization. And right now, there's a crack in that armor where, for the first time, thousands and hundreds of thousands, I can say, are coming out. They're waking up, but they're coming out to atheism because they recognize their God, who is Lucifer. They think that they were serving the God of the Bible. So the trauma of that religion forces them to become atheist. And that's why I started my YouTube channel, is because of the compassion I have for them, to try to show them the salvation of Jesus Christ as their Savior. And
Right.
it's working.
We have that, what you just explained, and we have that with other groups because they have been told and taught, and is kind of ingrained in their thinking that all other religious claims are evil and apostate. The only truth is the Watchtower.
Right.
And so if they leave, they already are persuaded there's no place else to go.
That's right. Right.
So,
And they live, and when I left, I lived in defeat for 20 years after I left because I still believed the lies. I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. It would kill me. It would kill me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it is our time to go. Where can they get to you? Now, we do have a link in the description, but where is your YouTube channel? And do you
Sure.
have a blog site? How do they get to those?
I have a website, jwescape.com. I have Bible studies on there. I do Bible studies with people, record them. I'm doing a spiritual abuse workshop with David Henke with Watchman Fellowship now. My YouTube channel is JW Escape, and jwescape777@gmail is my email account if you'd like to chat with me. That's it.
Thank you.
That's it. Ron, would you care to waltz us out of here?
Let's just do that waltz that we do. Let's give credit to whom credit is due. Our resident cult leader profiler is Neil before me. Our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Culinary services are provided by Chef Ham and Cheese. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just In Case. Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and D Opposer. Our Mormon archives manager is Polygamous, our liberal denominations, bureau chief is loosey-goosey. Transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur, special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys. Woe to humanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Joe Pullen. Technical assistance comes through Mercury Research. Our legal advisors are at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham & Howe. Our grievance resolution director is Ivana Pisami, director of privacy assurances wiretapping, and original idea sourcing comes from Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, both of whom are solely responsible for this content, although you will not be able to prove that in a court of law.
Never happen.
And we, yes. Well,
Elaine, thank you for being with us.
Thank
Hold on a
you
second.
so
After we
much.
Here, we're going to end the broadcast and say,